Hi, welcome back to Mind Matters. Mind Matters is our opportunity to discuss the rapidly emerging technologies that are re-engineering who we are as a society, a culture, and personally. Once again, I have Dr. Art Silverblatt with Webster University with me, and we are going to be talking about a variety of topics that some of them might find somewhat frightening, but we're going to give it a go anyway. Let's start talking about what people are referring to as the post-industrial society. And by that I mean twofold. Supply chain management. So I'm going to give you a quick scenario here real quick, and then we can discuss its implications, I think. But imagine a world not too long ago in which you wanted to buy a bicycle. And so you would go to a bicycle shop, you would actually go somewhere, and you would look at the variety of bicycles that were hanging on the rack, and one of them may or may not be what you exactly were after, but you bought it anyway.
Right.
Turn that model upside down. And there's great advantages to doing that. The first is, I don't have to pay for the paint or the metal or the transportation of that bicycle to get it into the store. If I turn that model upside down and I make everything web-enabled, oh, that's where we're at. Now I order the bicycle exactly as I want it configured, and it's delivered to my door. I spend no fuel cost. No one spends any fuel cost until it's sold. Where do you think a mediated society is going to apply itself in such an arena? I'm having a hard time understanding how media works in on-demand manufacturing marketplace.
Well, you know, one thing we have to consider, and we'll go back and talk about it, but we'll talk about how it doesn't work. You know, going to the mall is still our national pastime.
Yeah, true.
And which touches on a larger issue, which is that some of the things that we see are in our world that we can't account for is a result of our human nature. We like to go, you know, people go and hang out. It's a form of recreation for them. Could they do it online? Yeah, but you know, they could purchase things, but it's not a social thing. And so in many ways, some of the futurists, the people who are looking at things, have to take that into consideration. Some of the old things that don't have to be in place, you know, some of the things that are there for a reason. There's just not a logical one. I suppose that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But having said that, you know, the way that the business model works now, and you're absolutely right. There's no need for an inventory. People can construct something and have it delivered. It is cheaper. You know, grocery stores will be. Actually, what's interesting is things are going to go back to the old days in which groceries are going to be delivered, because it will be cheaper for them to deliver
than back to the first industrial revolution.
Absolutely, yeah. Rather than building a big store, it's cheaper for them just to deliver.
To bring it to you.
Yeah, and they can put it in the refrigerators that are ordering the food for you, and we'll have a back door that will open up to the outside
delivery firm.
Absolutely. So it will go out there, and so a lot of that will. Sort of happen on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. So back to our there's a common theme here, and the common theme is that we're dropping ourselves right into the computer itself. But there is Internet Protocol version 6, which is, don't need to get too technical about this, but basically it's a messaging ability, it's an identification ability in which everything now has an IP address. From the water bottle to the television to the lights to my watch to whatever it may be. And now everything is communicating. In fact, it wasn't very long ago in which the number of things that are hanging off the internet exceeded the human population. So now it's not people that are communicating so much on the net, it's all these devices in which we are now in the middle of.
Right. So you're tapping into these devices that are, it's like you're eavesdropping.
Exactly.
Right? Because these devices are communicating with each other, and maybe you'll get to listen in, you know.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things is that if you look at science fiction, if you look at the arts, you know, often what you're getting is sort of a projection. And artists are really shaman. You know, they're always like a step and a half. That's what makes them artists. They're a step and a half ahead, and they're able to maybe look at the way that the world is going to be. They have envisioned things that it's interesting. Jules Verne, almost everything he ever pictured
has come true.
Has come true, and we've passed through it, as a matter of fact. But the attitude toward it is different. You know, almost all of the science fiction, the projective fiction after World War I, the Great War, has been negative, has been pessimistic. It presents a world that we need to be alarmed about, you know. But there are futurists, people like Ray Kurzweil, who is talked about the singularity, it's a strange term, but it's a world that is a positive world. It's a world in which you have computers, which are now designing computers because it's beyond our capability, but it's positive. We will be moving out of some self-imposed limitations and scarcity into a world in which much more is possible because we're not trusting it to people, we're trusting it to machines.
Well, yeah, and I'm a futurist, and I'm very positive about it, and I do get into conversations with folks who find that a lot of this very intimidating, but I like a world in which I have telemetry built into my body that is informing me about the condition of certain chemical processes that are going on internally, so that in the event that I need to take a proactive action for health purposes, I can.
Yeah.
I envision a world in which the unexpected heart attack is a thing of the past, because you'll know it's coming for a month on end as the monitoring systems kick in.
Yeah.
That's kind of intimidating, especially when we live in a world in which the NSA is interested in everything we say or do. Are they going to be interested in everything that my body is providing in terms of telemetry as well?
Yeah.
Governance becomes really interesting. Democracy becomes interesting. We live in a representative form of government today, and what happens to a world where everyone has a voice and it can be heard immediately, as opposed to the 1700s when we had to put somebody on a horse and ship them off to Washington to represent us. I don't think we have really thought through all the implications of a massively mediated society, and it's this next generation that gets to figure a lot of this stuff out, no doubt about it.
Well, but and the interesting thing is that they're not intimidated. You know,
this is normal.
Yeah. Yes. And in fact, a lot of which is worrisome in some ways, because you know, a lot of the things that are that we see in media are presented as being normal. It's never there. They make assumptions. Again, it's this willing suspension of disbelief. You know, you believe almost everything because it's in the media. You know, and
if it's on the internet, it must be.
It's got to be true. Yeah, yeah, it would be in that machine if it wasn't true.
Exactly.
So we need to develop critical thinkers. We need to make skeptics out of our young people, and there's nothing wrong with that, because the answers, you know, if they're positive, well then great.
Well, in the internet, it's even more a playground for people like P.T. Barnum, in which he said there was a sucker born every minute. Now you have an internet sucker born every second, especially if they're buying everything lock, stock, and barrel, which is a Civil War term, by the way. On what they're actually digesting in the internet system. As we get deeper into, and we talked about this previously, the immersive technologies, all bets are off, because now we don't really understand the line between reality, whatever that may be, we haven't even defined that truly, and the reality it's being presented by all of these machines that are generating this information.
Right.
We're on the verge of another revolution, and that is the 3D printing revolution.
Oh, yes.
In which everything is now available on demand at your fingertips. Staples just recently announced that they are going to start providing Kinko's-like services where you take your flash drive with your 3D model and they plug it into their machine and you walk out with an object. I don't think there's been a lot of thought to the implications of that, other than back to our bicycle model. Now I don't even have to order it online. I just ordered the 3D CAD CAM drawings, and I printed at the local Kinko's or Staples, or even in my own living room, if I happen to have the right technologies. That is a remarkably interested, mediated world that is influencing what it is that I'm actually manufacturing in my own domain.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the possibilities that I think is intriguing is that now we have artisans, we have designers, and the problem with that is that how do you make a living when you're producing a one-of-a-kind item? People can't, artists can't do, it's hard to do. But with 3D printing, depending, as this develops, if the material begins to change, if they're able to produce certain things, you're going to have people that are going to be able to produce multiples
Right.
of their designs. Well, that converts the artist into the manufacturer, the production person.
Right.
Oh, well, how
Which
spectacular.
disconnects the whole notion of capitalism to begin with.
Yeah.
Because capitalism implies that you needed to have investment in order to be able to be a manufacturer. That's going away.
Right, right. And that you go to a store and there's stuff on the rack that you get. Well, you can get things that are going to be a whole lot more customized.
Right.
And that will make it more
The
interesting.
days of the cobbler are coming back.
Yeah.
Nike is proposing two things, that they are no longer in the shoe business, they are in the telemetry business. So they're in the data business. But they're also proposing that the day will come with 3D type printing that you will actually be able to buy a pair of shoes that fit you.
Right.
As opposed to 7.5 and an 8.5 and somewhere in between, lie a shoe that actually fits you.
Right.
Personalized products will also allow individuals to be able to be their own designers. Some
sure.
of them will be quite poor designers, but at
Right.
least they'll have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
The supply chain implications are difficult to understand. There's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of conversation that's occurring in the net at large. For those of you in the audience, I would recommend that if you're really interested in 3D printing, probably your best resource is one of the Better Business social networks. And I would recommend making sure that you have an account at LinkedIn if you don't already have one. And watch what the forums are discussing regarding 3D printing. And if you get to LinkedIn, find me. Let's get connected. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to pick this up with the singularity and some of the other issues regarding the impact of advanced technologies on education. See you in a minute.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Turn here. There. Excuse me.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Mind Matters. So let's talk about education.
Okay.
It's the area that I like to dwell in a lot. I don't think anyone would argue with, let's talk about K through 12. Students are really not designed, never have been designed, but no longer designed to sit in a classroom for 60 minutes and listen to somebody talking to them, especially in this highly mediated world.
Right, unless it's us. You know.
Exactly.
Right. But everybody else.
Unless they're watching this show, in which I'm sure they're at rapt attention and listening to our every word. There has been a lot of talk about re-engineering the educational system in the United States, which has gone nowhere, right?
Right.
We are dealing with an educational system that was designed to satisfy the needs of the 50s, 60s, and a hair of the 70s. And so now we're on the verge of students who are much better educated using iPads and iPhones and droids than the educators themselves. What does this all mean? What do we do next?
Right. Well, how do we educate? Well,
Right. What is education is really
yeah.
a question, too.
Yeah. You know, there was a position open at a university for a media professor in a particular field. It doesn't matter, but and I was thinking about it, and it occurred to me that the most qualified person I know is currently a junior at Webster. You know,
Yeah.
what does that tell you?
So the whole idea of credentials becomes
Credentials
suspect,
become
too.
very interesting, yeah, because as people, you know, learning has, you've got learning and then you've got formalized learning. And people learn all the time that they're, hopefully, when they're alive and awake. For us suddenly to say, well, this is, you know, this is meaningful learning, is silly.
Yeah.
Particularly when you find, you know, that the early, you know, what are they teaching at the early grades? Behavior management. That's all they're, you know, how to stand in line, how to raise your hand, how to, you know,
to be good factory workers.
how to be quiet. Yeah, absolutely. So. And often, as a result, people end up hating learning. You know, the old rite of passage where at graduation people throw their hats in the air, the idea being that I never have to learn anything again.
Right.
And that's
sad.
That is. It's very sad. It's very pathetic. So part of what, you know, happens in this mass-mediated world is that you never stop learning, and you never want to stop learning.
Well, and the information of the world is available at your fingertips.
Right.
So the old model, I'll pick on history because I'm a history buff, but the old model where you had to memorize dates and events, perhaps you should just be more concerned about trends.
Absolutely.
And look up when things occurred instantaneously through your Google app or whatever it may be.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's fast forward to higher education, because that's an area that I think we're going to have to think hard about. First of all, many institutions are collapsing underneath their own financial weight. Secondly, the towers themselves have done a pretty good job insulating themselves from the real world, and in many ways may not be as involved in the day-to-day world as they used to be. There has been a lot of conversation in the forums, and what's interesting to me is the people that are making the most critical conversations about higher ed are people that are not on the inside of higher ed. So we seem to be witnessing the standard market collapse with outside forces, with the inside forces basically being protecting their turf. There's a lot of questions about credit hours and accreditation, and there's a lot of questions about the validity of, for instance, a bachelor's degree when it was earned in 1972. Is it still valid? Do you have any notions of what you think education might look like even 5 years down the pike? This is a tough one because we don't know.
Right. Well, there are a few things. I think, you know, I think one can argue that a future of higher ed is game theory, or probably just education in general. You know, in junior high and high school and elementary, you know, you can use games and game theory to teach a lot. Usually now what they're doing is teaching you to, you know, to kill other, you know, monsters and such. But you can teach a lot through games and game theory.
In simulations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, about history and about you know, economics, all kinds of different things. You're so right about, you know, the institution of education, and I'm not sure that we know. I'm an educator, and I'm not sure we know really how to deal with it, how to monetize it in a way. You know, there is a phenomenon, I think, that's called MOOCs. And a MOOC are a series of free online courses that are being offered by some really top-notch educators from Ivy League schools who just decided that they wanted to try this. And what they're doing is just going online and they are teaching, not worried about the kinds of things that generally, are plague educators about grades.
No credit hours, no fees, no nothing.
No, and and some of one of the classes has 300,000 people.
Yeah.
Well, now people are, different schools are trying to get in on it. They're trying to figure out, well, maybe we can work out a deal with
How
these.
can we make a buck?
How can we make a buck? And so we'll take this and we'll do it for credit. We'll be able to pay somebody, and then we'll transfer the credits and do all that stuff. Well, it doesn't work for lots of reasons. One is how are you if you're going to turn this into a grade proposition with 300,000 students.
How are you going to do that? How are you going to manage it?
It's going to undermine what they wanted, which I think is just to teach and for the people to learn. And so but people are flocking to it, and it gets to that question about when what is education? What happens when you've gotten a degree in 1958? What does that mean?
What does it mean? What is an educated person?
Right.
I think that's one of the most important questions that we have to answer in the next immediate future, 4 to 5 years. Because on the other side of the coin, I don't like to hear that education is preparing people for jobs.
Right.
Because that's not what education is. Education is teaching us how to think, I believe.
Absolutely.
There has been a very interesting conversation going on, once again, in the forums about a mentor on demand. Getting closer to a one-to-one relationship between a student and a mentor or an instructor, which is very feasible in an electronic world. Once again, iPad, iPhone, Droid.
Right.
You have that instructor available at your beck and call, and you could have dozens of them. And so one of the models that they were dreaming up, and we're just making this stuff up, we don't know whether there's any viability to it or not, but one of the models they dreamt up was, well, then why would your education ever end? And so why wouldn't you have a relationship with this mentor potentially for the rest of your life? Now we really don't know what higher education as we define it today, how it plays into that scenario at all.
Sure. If you ask, what is a BA, actually, what does it represent? Well, it shows that you've learned how to learn. That's all.
Yeah.
You can go into 5 different learning environments, and you can systematize it. You can, you can assemble the information. You can assimilate it. You can think through it. That's all that it does. What you don't want to be doing at Lindenwood or Webster is teaching a particular editing system, if you're teaching editing, okay? It's a conceptual thing because the systems are going to change. By the time you've been out in the field, they'll have a brand new system, and that's so that you'll be wasting your time. So really, something like editing is a conceptual issue, and that's what the
learning experience is all about.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to tell entering freshmen into a 4-year institution is right now statistics indicate that the day they start school, when they graduate, they will end up working for a company that doesn't even exist yet. In an industry that may not even exist yet.
Right. So that even when, the criticism about schools really just preparing people for careers. Preparing people for careers is a conceptual thing. If they're going to be doing jobs other than, the old days of the Henry Ford, turning that, you've got to be able to think. You've got to be able to understand your environment, and that involves theoretical, abstract thinking.
So, and this is going to lead right into our next topic, which is the whole notion of singularity. But what we're keen on here is not only the definition of education, but it's the definition of what being human is.
Right.
What are the traits that make us a human? And as we get deeper and deeper into automation and robotic systems, that assembly line that Ford put together to manufacture automobiles won't have a human to be found.
Right.
And so the question really then becomes, well, what do people do? What is the purpose of people if we don't work?
Right.
And Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book in the late 90s, which still has a lot of viability, and he named the book The End of Work because he saw that automation cycle, he saw that robotic cycle getting to the point that you really don't need a labor force anymore.
Right.
And so education becomes even more important because now we need people with conceptual thinking, we need people with imagination skills as opposed to route memorization skills.
Sure. I mean, if you ever saw Modern Times, the Chaplin movie.
Chaplin movie, brilliant.
And it underscores really how cruel that
We
Henry
treated
Ford.
people horribly.
Well, that
Yeah.
we trying to turn them into machines,
Yeah.
and that it just killed people's spirits. They would, people spend 8 hours, 10 hours a day, 12 hours, just doing this methodical, teaching you not to think, not to feel,
Yeah.
just to and to be alert. It's hard because you have to.
There's old films of the person that would do this 12 and 14 hours a day. Grab a part, put it on. Grab a part, put it on. Because we didn't have robots, right?
Right.
So we treated people like robots.
Yeah, yeah. And then on the other hand, so you've got people, man as machine, and then you've got machines as women, as men and women as human. Now when we first encountered computers, they were designed to collect information, essentially. But somewhere along the line, it became capable of inductive thinking. Okay, I mean that is thinking. Inductive process is where you take information A and B and it takes you to C. You have computers now that can think. They can reproduce. They can reproduce themselves.
Right.
And so you just set that in motion.
There is a 3D printer that when you buy the 3D printer, it comes with the instruction set to replicate itself.
Yeah.
You can make another 3D printer. We are building robots that replicate themselves.
Oh yeah, and the work that they've been doing with people who are paraplegics, where they are working out, and I don't know how they're doing it, but they're able to manipulate robotic arms with their thoughts.
With their thoughts. Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's changing things radically.
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting machines that are becoming intuitive.
Yeah.
They're able to.
You're creating machines that are extending the human experience. Now I can control my environment by merely thinking about it.
Right. So I'm thinking, well, if you get a computer that can think, that's capable of inductive thought and communication, well, they'll shoot it into your brain, before it's too long. Well, what happens when you cross over? I'm waiting for
Right.
a computer to tell me what exactly
What's on the other side.
What's on the other side?
Yeah.
There is no reason it couldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe there is, but why?
We're going to run out of time pretty quickly. We probably ought to do yet another 5 or 6 of these, but we have to touch on the singularity. And the singularity has a lot of elements to it. It's like an octopus. But as we get deeper, and some of the things that we've alluded to in this show and the previous show, everything gets connected. Everything talks to everything. Everything is wired, including us.
Right.
And so at some point, as we get wired, the wall of individuality begins to evaporate. The story I like to tell is a story that I've often told on this show. There was a study done of little girls who are highly wired. So these are 12 and 14-year-old little girls who are connected, Facebook, texting, whatever it may be, 8 to 12 hours a day. So they're in the system. And one of the quotes from the little girls, it still haunts me, but I think this is where we're going. One of the quotes of the little girls, she said, "When I don't have my cell phone, I don't know who I am." And I believe that to be the definition of the singularity, is that at some point, we as individuals start to blur out into the network in general. And we no longer view ourselves as an individual. We view ourselves as part of the Borg, if you will. Yeah. We're down to the last couple of minutes. If you can give me your idea of what you think the singularity is going to do to us, and where you think we're going.
Well, again, realizing that human nature being what it is, someone asked me about an old high school friend, guy I love dearly, and they said, "How's Alan doing?" And I said, "Well, he's the same, only more so." You know, and that's what happens to people. You know, I think the human race, you know, we're going to be humans, but it's just more so.
Yeah.
Maybe it will help us to fulfill some of the potential that we've got. You know,
agree.
we have we're part man and we're part divine and we're part animal, you know, and we can cultivate one side or another. That's always been the struggle of humankind, to bring out the best or bring out the worst. And I think that the way that Kurzweil talks about it, it represents an opportunity for us to realize that the noble side of human beings and the divine, the divinity within us.
I agree. I think we're at the point that we're going to discover very rapidly that humanity is going to be the best it's ever been, or the darkest period we've ever seen. This is Mind Matters. Get engaged in the conversation. Find us on the blog. Send us emails. This is your future. It's all of our future. See you again.